We live? Yes.
We are live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Witches and Wine. This is the show where we talk about witchy stuff and we drink wine. Clink and drink.
Clink and drink.
Clink and drink.
Clink and drink.
I can't wait for you to talk about this wine. Have I had this?
Nope.
This is amazing.
This is new for us.
Oh, it's good. I'm really excited. So before we get started, I am your hostess with the mostest. I am Lady Lola Stardust, the High Priestess of Children of the Crossroads in Spokane, Washington.
And I am Lord Silenus Stardust, High Priest of Children of the Crossroads here in Spokane, Washington.
And before we start the show, I like to do a little disclaimer. It has been brought to our attention that some people do not like to get their witchy information while people are partaking in wine. They say that, it's not professional. You guys get a little tipsy and talk, and we get that. So we like to let you know that you have the power not to watch us. You can just click the X in the corner and we disappear.
You got the power.
Yes, you do. It's magic. So before we get to our amazing guest, which I am just so excited about, and we're going to talk about the wine tonight. So Silenus, why don't you tell us about the wine?
Well, tonight I have chosen Blue Canyon's Monterey Pinot Noir. It's an estate-grown Pinot Noir out of the Monterey region in California. With a lot of style of the Monterey Pinot Noir. It's got nice dark fruits, but very light and playful on the tongue. Not aggressive at all, very low tannins. Like I said, a lot of berry notes. You're going to get some vanilla, a touch of spice, just elegant. 92 points rated. Just high quality, easy drinking Pinot Noir. If you like California Pinot Noirs, going to pair with any kind of light, subtle, soft dish. And you're not going to pay much for it. You're talking $15 to $20 a bottle, guys. So really good value and deal on this one. So pick it up, enjoy it. If you're having a meal and you can't figure out what you're going to pair to it, this would be a great bottle to bring out for that night.
It's really light for a red wine, but it doesn't have the color of the dark, bold reds that we like.
Well, no, it doesn't have that cab structure, the Syrah color, any of the dark grapes that we generally enjoy. But Pinot Noirs are considered the most food-friendly of the grapes and the wines. And a lot of high-end wine drinkers will only drink Pinot Noirs for the subtleties and the nuance that Pinot Noir gives you that no other grape can.
Yeah, it's really, really good. I like this a lot. Well, thank you for sharing that. So I am very excited. We have this amazing guest. If you don't recognize him or know the name, you're going to learn about it tonight, but I'm sure people know who he is. It's the wonderful Alexander Cabot. Welcome to the show, Alexander.
Thank you.
Hey.
Thank you for having me.
And so Alexander and I got the privilege of talking to him, 4 years ago.
4 years ago,
during pandemic. Me and the archpriestess of the Aquarian Tabernacle Church had a show. I can't remember the name. Candid Chats with Bella. That's right. And I was the producer, but I also got to ask a lot of the the music and entertainment questions. And I specifically remember that me and Alexander bonded on the music scene in the New York in the 80s, 90s, that kind of thing. And so that's stuck in my head, of course, because I'm a music freak and I'm obsessed with club culture and all that stuff, being a ex-raver girl from the 90s. Just the glow sticks and oons, 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 oons. So that was my life. So I love that. And we're going to touch upon that too as well. So Alexander, oh my gosh, you are amazing. Can you tell us, just recently you just got back. You said you're jet lagged. So
I just got back this morning, and I had very little sleep, but because I had to check on other things. But I'm okay, and I'm glad that I was able to be here with you, and we're going to reminisce and talk about history.
You came back from South America, and we were talking about this was not your first trip. How many times have you been over to South America?
I would say I lost count. It's about maybe over 20 times.
Oh, wow.
To Brazil, particularly. I traveled all over South America, but I've been to Brazil. I love Brazil. It's very similar to my native culture. Brazil has always, professionally, that's the first time that I've been to Brazil, and I fell in love with it, and I made friends, and I've been back every so time. And then when I was ordained and initiated by Laurie Cabot, my first ministry work was to represent the tradition in Brazil.
That's right. I
And
remember you talking about that before. Yeah.
I became an ambassador for the tradition, and I went to Brazil, and that was my first exposure with the pagan or Wiccan community of Brazil, which they're quite large.
Yeah. And so I'm always curious because I've never met in person. I've read about, or I've connected with people online, but in countries or in places like Brazil, how did they get exposed to witchcraft? And is it different than the witchcraft that we know about from, Europe and the States?
Yeah, is it more Western European or is it more native?
Yeah.
Well, they do. They had Laurie Cabot's book, which is more of an American tradition, landed back in the 90s, I believe, because of Paulo Coelho. This is a very renowned author in Brazil that was able to bring her work to Brazil, and they fell in love with it. And then the BTWs now has been brought to Brazil through an amazing man. His name is Claudine Prieto, and he's the publisher. And also he holds events of this huge mystic fair event that goes throughout the whole country of Brazil.
Wow.
And the conference, which I just came back from, I did a whole one of the weekends that I was in Brazil. I was there to represent of the Cabot tradition, but also to represent my literary work that was being translated to Portuguese and published.
Yeah.
That was the launch that we
Yeah.
had in Brazil.
Awesome. That's amazing. And now when you talk about the Cabot tradition, again, we have viewers that are new to witchcraft. We have viewers that have been doing witchcraft for a long time, but I like to make sure for our newer viewers, Laurie Cabot's tradition, she's been labeled the Witch of Salem. That's correct. Is that correct? And you kind of connected with her. When did you meet Laurie and connect with her?
I met Laurie back in 1986. It was a mutual friend that like-minded, and I was already back then. In '86 I was already initiated into the Welsh Gardnerian and also New York Wica, which is a offshoot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so I went to Salem for the first time, and I've heard there was this program called Leonard Nimoy's In Search Of.
Yes.
And they had an episode on Laurie Cabot and the Salem and the Witches of Salem. And
Yeah.
so I was enthralled with that episode, and I couldn't believe that I was going to go there in person and meet this spectacular trailblazer such as Laurie Cabot. So that was my first exposure to Salem and Laurie Cabot. And then back in 2009, I decided that I would re-energize my spiritual journey and honor my Celtic heritage. What better person than Laurie Cabot?
Right.
So I ventured off to Salem, and I was placed in her tutelage and mentorship, and I couldn't believe that those 10 years or more than 10 years
Mm-hmm.
have now made me a spokesperson and upholding the priesthood for the goddess.
And when you say upholding the priesthood for the goddess, what does that mean? What does that look like?
It's merely being a representative for female divinity, showing that before God there was goddess, and
Mhm.
and without goddess there's no balance. there's that principle of gender that we need to have that logistics.
Yeah.
That is important for any tradition. So, and even in the Abrahamic faiths, it's been kind of dismissed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Even though in the scriptures, in the Hebrew scriptures, there is a female counterpart to God. And if our sentient, first of all, our globe, our planet that we live in is a sentient being. It is fertile, so it has the female energy. It's
Yep.
so pronounced in this our home, in this planet that we live in. Second of all, we come from a woman, so that's another thing, that the mysteries of nature, the magic of nature, of childbearing, of childbirth, that is something to be recognized. And just because of the Abrahamic faiths have dismissed female divinity, we, as the secret child of the goddess, we need to bring that in acknowledgement.
Yeah, and I love that, because it's, it makes sense that it takes two to tango, right? It takes the projective and the receptive energies to create. And I used to run a women's group called Red Tent, and it was celebrating women. It was based on the idea of the woman's womb, why it's called red. And we would get asked a lot, I'd have women that had hysterectomies or didn't have children, or and they were like, I can't relate to that kind of childbearing. And it's like, there's a symbolic part of it too. We all can relate to it, because it's about creativity. It's creating. We birth things.
Correct. Even with the craft, the symbol of the chalice, it's it's female.
Yeah.
So that's the womb itself. And
Yeah.
so when you bring in the athame, or modern Wiccans would say athame, when you bring into the chalice, brings conjoys blessedness. So this is what's important. Those are pagan rites that have been dismissed and or adapted into Christianity.
Yep, absolutely. So being the holding up that tradition and carrying it out, does that put a lot of pressure on you, or are you just like, I am so happy to be this, I guess,
I never want. I've always been a private person, and I'm shy, believe it or not. So I never thought that I would be within the being a role model, or spokesperson, or even an author. I never thought that I would actually put myself out there, but it happened when she gave me the right to represent the tradition in Brazil, and it opened up doors for me to go to England. And I was in England, and I have a long history now of it's 9 years now that I've been a representative for the Arthurian war band with the Archdruid of Stonehenge.
Oh, wow.
So I'm part of that group and advocacy to bring for the rights of ancestral honor. So this is something that I uphold, and I never thought that it happened, but it did. And if the goddess wants me to do so, and this is a way for me to upkeep the legacy of such an amazing woman, such as Laurie Cabot, who's been that trailblazer, who's been that spokesperson of witchcraft. And today we have, an American-owned tradition such as hers.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because that's a couple of different lineages that you said you've worked with over time. So kind of explain, what is some of your magical lineage?
Yeah.
I started off in 1995. I was initiated into the Welsh, which is the Welsh traditionalist, stemming back from Gwen Thompson of Connecticut. And for those that know about it, it's an old Welsh tradition that Eddie Basinski was able to adapt. He only reached second degree, but then he was able to make his own version of the Welsh tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And today it has flourished. It's an amazing tradition of ancestry, of just humanity, culture, love.
Yeah.
That is it's upheld within so many groves throughout, and even abroad.
Yeah. Well, I like that you said second degree, because there's a I am finding, but we're in a smaller part of Washington State. It was Spokane, Washington, and the witches come out. We have a festival here called Northwest Pagan Fest, where all the witches in Spokane come out, which is really awesome. But I find that being Wiccan, a lot of them are not familiar with our lingo when we say first degree, second degree, third degree. And so I guess what
Well,
I'm saying is, oh, go ahead.
yeah, it's unfortunately it's the new generations today. They are not interested in these degrees,
Yeah.
or the work that is needed to build on your own spiritual journey.
Mhm.
This is something that's why being a spokesperson, that's why being and sharing and being brave enough to share my own memoirs.
Yeah.
So this book, Memoirs of a High Priest, which will be published fall of 25 by Schiffer Publishing. I'm happy to say that I've added more material to it since the British edition, and this is something that I leave behind, my own legacy, to
Mhm.
show them that each tradition should be upheld um, with respect, with authenticity, with genuineness. Uh, the mixing of things, it's okay when you fuse them, but there's a certain responsibility that you have to have.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've learned that, I've only been, we are all witches. We find that we are kind of born, you can be born a witch or something that
There's always been things that have witchy behaviors and concepts, but you didn't know exactly what it was until you found it.
Yeah, and for me, I've only been doing this publicly in just our small part of the world, for the last 10-11 years. And for me, it's really been about the work. Like you say, it's the work that's put in. Yes, it's fun to have that witchy, the spells and the aesthetic
Yeah,
of
but then
oh,
you
I'm a
become a
witch.
spellcaster,
Yeah.
or they need to encompass the history before they actually can act
Yeah.
on the tradition itself. And there's nothing wrong being a self-proclaimed or even self-initiated. There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
It is best that then you will develop communal energies.
Hmm.
Unite. In unity there is strength. I uphold each tradition. I am now a Cabot. I'm only Cabot tradition, and so I'm still a member of the New York Coven of Witches. I'm one of the elders here in New York City, as well as a representative and a high priest for the Cabot Kent Hermetic Temple in Salem, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So cool.
And it is doing the work. And when we train our students in our coven, that's one of the things we say is it's about community. It's about I guess, you know, I hate to say spreading the word because that sounds so Christian, but it is about spreading the word of the goddess,
making yourself available for those who want to hear the word.
and
yeah, exactly. You'll always see seekers. That's why we don't proselytize.
No,
we
don't need to do that. Those who are like-minded will come and search for us, and it's about your own individual growth. Yes, sharing the communal energies, learning from that as well, growing spiritually from that as well. I have done it. I'm from New York City. I've traveled to Boston to Salem through many years to become this persona, and upholding the Cabot tradition, but as well as being a priest for my goddess.
Absolutely, and it is a priesthood. It is. We are clergy. We do that work for people, and you learn so many skills on how to interact with people, how to listen, how to speak from your heart, because I believe my heart is the goddess, because the goddess chose this for me. I know you can relate because you said you're a private person, but this is what the goddess wants you to do. I'm not a private person. I like being I don't know if you can tell. I'm very outgoing, but it combines my love for making people happy and my love for the goddess. And never in a million years would I have ever thought that I would be doing clergy work and bringing what I've learned and what I feel is important, whether it's through ritual or workshops or this show, what I love about the goddess. But we honor the God. Absolutely. We are very much about
the
balance.
But, and so the way I kind of look at it for myself is it's a power of three. I'm helping myself, I'm helping others, and I'm helping the goddess. And in my priesthood, I'm helping all these different things to make everyone that wants to be around me and myself better people, better witches, better messengers of the goddess.
Yeah.
And putting myself out there that we can show that we have things that we can teach you, but we can have things that you can teach yourself, that we can help you teach yourself.
Yeah.
Where, we seem to get a lot more out of seeing our students learn more than what we get out of for ourselves and us learning more.
Yeah.
Because we see the growth in them and we see that aha moments, and it really, encapsulates why we do this.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. Even what you said this earlier when you opened up the show about naysayers and about the wine topic.
It happens.
Wine has been, with us for it's the nectar of the gods.
Yep.
So why, when you're doing it, yes, exactly. When you're doing it in a very balanced, natured, good-natured spirit, that's what's important.
Yeah.
You'll always have naysayers, and like you said, if they don't agree with you, you could move on.
Yeah. We just did a public ritual at Northwest Pagan Fest, which is the third year here in Spokane, and it's what, how many people? A couple thousand?
We have 2,000, 3,000 people come through in a one-day event.
And we got the honor to do the closing ritual. And what we did, because it's Mabon, we like to do the myth of Persephone, and this would be the time where she goes to the underworld. And so we did a very traditional Wiccan we call it Wicca light for the public. We did where we cast the circle and did all the things energetically, and then my husband and we were Persephone and Hades, and we had people come to us, and we gave them blessings because this is the dark time of the year, and we wanted them to know that we're with you and this and that. And there were some naysayers that were like, well, you didn't close the circle properly and blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, we did. You just didn't stick around for that part.
You left the closed circle, so you're the one that has made that choice too.
They said you didn't, and we get that a lot. We get that as in our coven because we are known for our love of wine and talking. We have been known and labeled as the drunk coven, which we have never taught a class drunk.
Nope.
But it comes with that, and this is on a smaller scale, right? It's not like this is going to be like, all over the place, but we've dealt with our naysayers, and that's why we do the little disclaimer like, hey, you know what? There's so much information out there.
Oh, well, how about the BTWs with Gardnerian?
Oh, gosh.
You had the wines and cakes. So,
Yep.
Wine has always been around, the days of the Dionysus. And so it's just everything within balance, moderation.
Yep.
I think that's what's important.
Exactly. So you were talking about your book. First of all, I'm fascinated with the fact that at the age of, I don't know if this is in your book, but we're gonna talk about your book here, but I want to get this also. You were 13 when you became part of the Palo Mayombe.
I had, it's in one of my chapters. It's called Papache, and it relives the experience I had with that particular African diaspora of Cuba, and so it relives the moment that I was I had this childhood friend who was Afro-Cuban, and him and we were so close, and then from there on he invited me to his house, and I developed such a bonding with his father, and his father was a Taita, and so I was able to experience and grow and be part of this African diaspora and the family itself, and the richness of their history with Ernest Hemingway as well, because he worked at the estate of Ernest Hemingway in Cuba, and so I go with his whole life story of initiation and how he was led into this African Congo origin religion that was primarily a percentage in Cuba. Obviously, it was the umbrella was religion was Catholicism, but then there was the Ifa. You had Ifa and you had Regla de Ocha, making what we call today Lukumi, which is the Creole version of Santeria or Yoruba.
Yes.
Its origin is Yoruba. So we had that, and then we had Palo Mayombe, which is stemming from the Congos.
And why 13? Was that a age that was meaningful, or it just happened?
It just happened. It just happened that my inclination to the occult sciences as a little boy, mediumship, I was drawn into the family, and it was at the age of 13 that he taught me the wonders of this religious system or tradition.
We talk about age in witchcraft, and for the coven that I was trained in, I guess we want 18 and older, but for those more native belief systems and traditions, can you explain why being younger is okay? Do you know where I'm going with
this? It's individualized.
Okay.
For me, it happened to be because I had the yearning, the eagerness of learning spirituality in other forms. So it just happened to be that I am Cuban American.
Mm-hmm.
I was born in Havana. I came to the States when I was 16 months old. I grew up here, so having that biculture lifestyle, and I was able to experience the magical works of my own native culture.
Yeah.
So it was more individual. No, they
Okay.
do not. They don't indoctrinize, a child right away, or they don't. It's not about that. It's that if the child is eager enough, they will start slowly. But I was head on. I knew I was an old soul. I
Mhm.
knew that I have walked the path before. I knew that I needed to relive this in this life form or this plane of existence.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to me. It happened that at the age of 13, I was head on with this system of necromancy, and it was an amazing experience, and also it heightened my psychic abilities.
Hmm. Do you want to touch upon why you already knew? I mean, I know a little bit about your past. When I was reading up on your bio, when I was like, send me a bio, and that bio blew my mind away. I was like, geez, like most people that send me stuff, they're like, I always knew that I was different, but you literally felt you. Tell us about when you were born and what
Well,
happened with that.
coming from a very magical free thinkers. Okay,
Hmm.
so there's a lineage of men in my family that are Freemasonry,
Okay.
Yes.
and so these Freemasons they've always been free thinkers, adapting the occult sciences, adapting all the religious systems, having it within balance, and knowing about the creator itself, the universal mind. So having those role models were great for me,
Hmm.
because I knew that I had that spark. I knew that I had this before. Um, Developing my mediumship, having paranormal activities or experiences. That's another thing I write in my book. Having these, the norm for me. Even though you would think that they're paranormal, but it was normal for me to
Yeah.
have these experiences, and then asking the questions. And my grandparents always told me that I would find out for myself, that they would guide me or teach me, but overall will find the path that I needed to take.
When you talk about Freemason, that's another thing that I'm very much into, because when I was 14 or 15, I became part of Job's daughters, which is the daughters of the Masons.
Yeah.
And that is where I learned ritual. I learned about
Correct.
ritual, and
Correct.
I tell people that, and they're like, but we sang Christian songs, but I
The
learned about
Psalms,
ritual.
the Psalms are powerful. They
Yeah.
could be considered as spells, and
Yeah.
so you have to understand, even the BTWs. Gerald Gardner, where did he take, to create his own tradition? There's Freemasonry, there
Yeah.
was Rosicrucian,
Yep.
Yep.
there was the Golden Dawn.
Yep.
Yep.
Golden
So
Dawn, yeah.
he took a lot and fused it together
Oh
to
gosh,
create
yeah.
his own BTW today, that has been federally recognized as Wicca.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so I'm always, I like to hear about the Freemasons, because there's a part of me I'm like, oh yeah, I learned all that stuff when I did that from the time I was 14, 15 till about 18.
Hmm.
And I didn't know at the time, until I was studying Wicca later. I was like, oh, this is very familiar. Like I learned this stuff. So
And also the 3 degrees.
The 3 degrees.
Where do you think that comes from?
Exactly. We were.
We'll speak. Go ahead.
Oh no. I was just gonna say we were junior princess, senior princess, and then honored queen for Job's daughters, and that was our 3 degrees. We worked up to that, and when you became honored queen, which I loved because we got to wear a little crown and we had our white robes once you were honored queen, you got the purple robe over it or the cape. Oh my gosh, my mom and dad, who were very Christian, they were like, this is a cult. And, and I was like, yeah, I loved it.
They were spelling it A space CULT, and you were seeing it as OCCULT. So,
Yeah.
No, and surprisingly enough, in Freemasonry, there's a lot of Christians.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have a close friend who has just been recognized as a Freemason.
Yeah.
And in the fraternal order, and he is so far away from Christianity. That might be the most furthest person from Christianity I have ever had the pleasure of knowing in my life.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was just recognized recently, and he is the first person in his area who happens to be African American and a Freemason.
Yeah. So I love. To me, this is there's a book by I believe it's by Mark Booth called Sorry, Silenus has to take the old lady dog outside or else she'll make a mess in the house. This is live television, people. But there's a book, I believe, by Mark Booth called The Secret History of the World. And it talks about all those secret societies and the mystery religions. And if anyone wants to check it out, please do. It's the book that got me hooked on what came before and what's always been here. You know what I mean?
The Freemasonry, especially the origins of the Scottish Rites, goes way back to the Crusaders.
Yep.
And the salvation of knowledge from the Crusaders.
Yeah.
So this is nothing that it's always, as humanity, it's always been a chain link reaction. So we've always, from the Sumerians to the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans. So it's always been a chain building blocks to what we are today. From the Romans to the Byzantine Empire. So you have that chain reaction, where like honoring your ancestors, honoring your elders. Where do you get your energy? Where do you actually get your source of magic from?
Well, I'm my mother's Mexican, and she tells me stories about when she was a child, and the word bruja was whispered in her small little town about her mother. And she talked about my grandmother, and she talks about, and my mom is very Christian. And when I came out as a witch, my mom wasn't surprised. And that's when she started talking about her mother and all the quote unquote witchy things that her mother did. And so there's this part of me that's very connected with that, that lineage that I have, because I don't know a whole lot about my lineage with witchcraft, but I know my lineage with my relatives. And I know that on my mother's side, there was a lot of magic. There was a lot of earth worship and healing, lots of healing. And
Correct.
the healers in the village, that was my grandma. She just did it. She had 10 children. My mom is one of 10 children. She did that. She would make these concoctions and so my mom passed them on to me, and I just thought, well, every family does this. And I learned later, I'm like, no, they don't.
Well, that's what folklore is. Folklore is that, family traditions that became oral traditions, not necessarily to have they written down. That's why, when I didn't want to become an author, I didn't want to regurgitate witchcraft to what it is today. that it's now oversaturated into the market. I believe that we have too much of it today, and it loses its essence. So what's important, when I wrote my book, I wanted to write about my own life, leaving my own legacy. So yes, folklore, oral traditions, family, culture, folklore has such validity and substance to humanity.
Yeah.
And that's why when Gerald Gardner was developing, Wicca per se, he never really gave it the name Wicca. It just happened. This is something that he took, folklore from Burley, from the New Forest. So he was able to take this and pulling from other traditions to create British traditional witchcraft, because it already existed with folklore.
I just came across this guy. I wish I could remember his name, but he does a thing on YouTube called Esoterica, and he talks about Agrippa. Do you Agrippa? Someone from way back? Does that ring a bell? Agrippa.
No.
I will send you the information because I want to know because I'm just discovering it too. But you were talking about, I want to talk about your book. Obviously, we're talking about what you touch upon in this book. When you, this is my favorite part. It may not be about witchcraft, but it's about subcultures, countercultures. You were talking about your time in New York when you were in your youth, and you say you touch upon your days as going to the clubs and whatnot. This is fascinating to me. I'm an ex-party girl. I love all this. So when you were in I don't know if you want to age yourself, but how old were you around that time in the 80s when you started?
I was an adolescent. It was becoming of age. I'm from the era of the grassroots of the bohemian lifestyle of New York City, where New York was considered the nightlife capital of the world.
Yeah.
This is something that it was just part of my generation, and I was entrenched because my whole chapter on the magical child is about that. It's about my experiences with the clubs, such as the Limelight in 1983, and Danceteria that was before, and how accessible it was to have the magical child as a stomping ground. So I remember he had a Coca-Cola vending machine, and also a watering hole. So it was great to go in and visit Herman and see the occult hub of New York.
Yeah.
And before that, it was more secret, but having Herman and we used to call him the Gargamel of the magical child. So Herman was such a great, knowledgeable, friendly. They called him horrible Herman, but he was not, to me. He was not horrible at all. He actually loved the youth and always guided correctly. He always wanted to guide them correctly, teach them correctly.
Wasn't the owner of Limelight, didn't he get arrested for?
Yeah, I was, I think in 86, I think there was a closing of the club.
Yeah, Peter, someone with the Peter Gation or Gate. Yeah.
Yeah, he was German, I believe.
Yeah, he had the eye patch.
The eye patch,
I think.
yep.
Yeah.
German or
Peter.
You mean?
Gation.
Yeah. The owner of Limelight at the
Yeah,
time, blonde, platinum blonde.
Yeah.
Yeah. yeah, it went in through other metamorphic stages of the
Yeah.
club, and then
Was
it
the
opened up in
limelight?
the 90s as
Was the
Mia
limelight?
Culpa.
Was the limelight? That wasn't the church, was it?
That was the church.
That was the church.
Limelight was the church, yes.
The church, yeah,
Limelight was the church.
yeah. And when you say that, you know, the magical child and his stomping grounds, because I look back at my days as a club girl and a party kid, and I look, because I'm looking at it through these eyes of a witch, it makes sense to me. But at the time, I would have never connect. Now, you always knew you were of some sort of, you know, magical nature. I did not know, but when I look back on it, it makes sense. Can you explain why you called it the magical child and the stomping ground and all that?
Because it was part of my life of growing up, having the accessibility and having these pioneers of Wicca and that movement of the goddess of female divinity, such as Eddie Basinski, who developed 3 of these flourishing traditions that we have today. The Welsh, you have his Gardnerian lineage offshoot, which is Wicca tradition, the New York Wicca tradition, and then of course the Minoan Brotherhood. And then Lady Rhea and Carabazone were responsible for, in 1976, to develop the sisterhood.
Okay.
What's you said the Minoan Brotherhood?
The Minoan Brotherhood, yeah.
What is that? I've never heard of that one.
The Minoan Brotherhood is an ancient mystery school, which was primarily of same sex, like-minded individuals, and he developed the tradition with ancient Greek mythology. So the Minoan Brotherhood still has so many groves throughout the United States and then abroad as well.
I need to look at our puppy papers. We call them the puppy papers of where our lineage comes from our coven, because my coven that I hived off of, there is connections with the New York Wiccans, and I want to look. I need to look at that, and I'll get back to you on that and see if I can tell you.
Yeah, Herman was a huge force. There was obviously Eddie Basinski and Lady Rhea. So these were pioneers. These were personas that gave way through the female divinity and Wiccan movement that we have today. And also the magical child was a safe haven for the like-minded individuals. So and for the community itself.
Yeah. You were saying earlier, and I want to touch upon this because this kind of made me go, oh, I kind of sometimes feel the same way, where you're saying that are right now with the younger generation of witches and what's going on now. You said something about it being saturated.
I'm saying about literature today.
Yeah.
Literature today is not like what it was when I was growing up, where it was kind of taboo or scarce. We didn't have so many books on witchcraft. Well, we had Sybil Leek, we had Derek Gardner, we had Doreen Valiente. Those were, and it was poignant. It had substance. Today, I don't know, a kid who's 15 years old is writing about witchcraft and their experiences or their research. It's more about researching. So, and it has gotten watered down. I believe that's my own opinion. It has gotten watered down. It's oversaturated. You have Llewellyn, you have Weiser publishing books, like candy.
Oh yeah.
Well, could you imagine
publishing books out there that and I'm not I'm now an author who has created my own literary work, and I know that within that niche market, it's oversaturated.
So could you imagine, 30, 40 years ago when you started going down this path, that we would see where it's at now, where it is kind of the kitsch thing to do to be witchy, and there's
Not really. No, no.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, this was considered quite naughty.
Yeah.
You were not supposed to be talking about witchcraft. Mothers could lose their children.
Yeah.
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 There
Now
was
we
a
see
lot of
commercials.
prejudice, accusations, connotations, devil worshipping, satanic cults. So
But that was
you
satanic
were
panic era.
Yeah, the
So-
satanic panic
so
in the 80s.
that was satanic panic era
huge.
compared to now, where you see Sephora having the witch aesthetic out there.
Yeah.
You
Oh
have
yeah,
commercials
you
playing
have
upon
you
it.
have it all out there now. That's what I'm saying. It's now literary works are oversaturating the market. How I always say I kind of say to myself, how much can you write about witchcraft? How much
Well,
it's
I compare it to the gay community. When I was partying and go, I partied at the gay clubs, and I have a lot of gay drag queen friends and stuff from the 80s and 90s, and it was still very, people were dying over their sexuality, just like I feel that people were dying.
well, I'm a gay
Yeah.
person too,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I understand, and I have now kids, telling me what pronoun to use.
Yeah.
And
And
that's what I was
and
gonna
it's
say.
and so I believe that there's always time. I'm an older generation. I come from the grassroots of dignity, of humanity, of respect. And so that's what was the revolution of the gay community.
But
So
there's something
that's what
started
that was my torch, to carry.
Yeah.
And now it's more accepted. It's
Mhm.
we have now the transgender community, which is wonderful, and I honor that, and it's great. But you have to understand where you came from.
Yep.
We were downtrodden. We were even killed for
Yes.
being gay.
Well, and
It's the same thing with witchcraft.
well, it's a dovetailing. It's interesting to see that both gay and trans culture.
Well, because that
become-
was we in the '60s we had all that
Yeah.
movement of
Yeah.
revolutionary movements, such as the women's rights,
Yep.
Yes.
such
Yes.
as the African American rights,
Yes.
and also our own LGBTQ.
Yeah.
So it was the grassroots of humanity, dignity, self-respect, and living, within our community, at being acknowledged as human beings, such not as perverts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because you look now, like we're polyamorous, but we see polyamory, we see gay culture, we see trans culture, we see witchcraft or Wicca or paganism being accepted and more normalized in so many different aspects of society. It's very interesting to see how all those are kind of working in conjunction with each other as we're moving forward and we're evolving.
We're moving forward, yes, and technology has a lot to play with that.
Yeah.
The accessibility. So
Yeah.
we have, communication now is much more easier.
We had the ability to build community. Before it was very
The
hard.
access of information is
Yeah, yeah.
more accessible now. So this is something that technology has a lot to do with the ability and the modern times of today, having the acceptance. But still, there is those that do not accept, wish us harm. Excuse me. And so I understand that we still have a struggle. We still have a fight.
Well, and that's the thing is you were talking about earlier to honor the elders, right? The people that have brought stuff. And so that's where I was going with that is that I find myself with, and I have a 16-year-old son. We have a 16-year-old son and a 21-year-old son, right? So we get schooled on what is what's happening, what you can say or what you can't say, and so we're always like, but I was saying earlier, I talk about back in my day, and a perfect example for the gay community is I was, and I don't know if I can say this now, but I was considered a fag hag. This is what the gays called me, was a fag hag in the 80s and the 90s. And I said that term with younger generation, and I got jumped on, and I was like, I didn't come up with that label. My
No,
gay
but they
men
have
friends
to,
called me that.
that's why the young generation needs to recognize and learn from the historical movements and history itself. That's why, because they shouldn't be jumping on a term that, yes, to them it's a negative connotation today, but before it was normal within our own community.
Well,
And that's the same thing with witchcraft.
Yeah.
Is there's so many things now that we talk about. A lot of people, when they find out we're Wiccan, they're like, oh, that's so passe, that's so outdated. Gardnerian was a pervert. We know what, we've heard it all. We know it all, but it's still something that it's tradition. It's something that we want to bring to the limelight.
Well, the way I had someone explain it to me once, and it made so much sense to me, is the younger generation is the soldiers, the older generation are the generals.
Oh,
We're the ones that have, as we get older, we have the knowledge and we're able to kind of understand what's going
Well,
on.
we lived it.
Yeah.
We know. Hopefully, the young today, which I don't, the youth today do not know about the preservation of the old. They just, this sense of entitlement, unfortunately. But I think that with the right guidance
mm-hmm.
and education, we could do better. We could,
Absolutely.
and for them to have tolerance, because we had to have tolerance towards our parents.
Mm-hmm.
They came from a very conservative background, let's say.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
And or proper, so we were rebels.
Yeah.
Yep.
Remember the
Absolutely.
60s. I'm a child of the 60s, so that movement of revolutionary movements throughout the so many communities,
Yeah.
such as the LGBT, the women's right, the African American. So that gave way to what we have today.
Mm-hmm.
And so I mean, I think that anyone watching this, these, well, you're not an old fogey. I love that you call me a baby at 52, because I feel like I've been through a lot. But my husband at 45, I we know, we sit here and we go, we knew all this, and we want to, just honor that and know that we are bringing this to
No, and
where
and even the young today, they have something to say, and it's important for
it's
them
very
It is very
important.
be,
important.
and it's important for them to be acknowledged and understood. And yes, and there's a reason why we have an oversaturated market today.
Yep. They're the
There's more of a picking of, like, let's say, for an example, tarot cards today.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a sea of tarot cards.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So many types and versions and graphics. And back then, I remember it was the traditional Marseille, the
Yes.
Rider-Waite,
Yep.
or the Spanish cards.
Yeah.
As like the tarocchi, like the
Yes.
Italians would say. So
Yes.
that was the only exposure I had when it came to cartomancy,
Yep.
or let's say the occult sciences with Aleister Crowley, and so the 666 and the beast, and that controversy that he had. So I wrote a chapter based on my own experiences of what a wonderful man he was when he was within balance, and how intelligent and what marks of philosophy he left with his own, such as Thelema.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. And we could do a whole nother show on Aleister Crowley, because I am obsessed with him. But we are coming up to our hour. Look at this. Look at how quick it goes by, Alexander. I'm just like, I could talk to you for hours. Would you be willing to come back and do some more talking with us?
Absolutely. I love these organic podcasts.
I love it. This is amazing. Thank you so much, Alexander. We could talk for hours.
2 or 3, 5. And that's how Witches and Wine started. It was us sitting around with other witchy friends, drinking wine and just talking about the different aspects of everything that has to do with witchcraft, whether it's Wicca or not.
And we wanted to be a fly on the wall.
It's about humanity. It's about love. It's about sharing knowledge together.
Absolutely. And if you learn something from these witches here that are drinking wine and talking to awesome guests, yay! I'm so glad. Even if one person is like, I didn't know that. Woohoo! We have done our job. We have done our job. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And I thank you, Alexander. You have no idea how much this means to us. We are, like I said, we're the little show that could. And we just, we don't have a huge following, but people come to us. We have fans that come to us in person. This is amazing. We have people that find us at festivals and at community things, and they're like, oh my God, you're the Witches and Wine people. And we look at each other like, what? We're just like, okay. Do you have a good wine you could suggest? But so everyone, if you want to get a hold of, well, first of all, our coven is a nonprofit, and we do a lot of community work, and it comes out of our own pocket. So if you want to donate, we have a Venmo, which is right there. It's just COTCATC. And these donations are not required, but they're appreciated. And we also have a PayPal, which is COTCATC. Very easy to remember, a lot of letters. We would appreciate your donations. And also, if you ever want to get a hold of us, or you have questions, or you'd like to be a guest on our show,
or if you have a wine you want us to try, it's a personal favorite of yours that we have not showed on the show,
you can email us at
crossroadscoven@gmail.com.
I'm sorry, what was that?
That was crossroadscoven@gmail.com.
So everyone, remember, be so kind to one another and always walk with the goddess. And until next time, blessed be. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye. And remember to clink and drink.
And always clink and drink. Bye.